It's the weekly wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap, and it's my favorite part of the show, wherein I guess what's in Tim's background today. I'm going to think, Tim, it is a picture of Country Joe and the Fish from Woodstock in 1969, superimposed on Burning Man, and they're wondering where everybody went. They didn't go waist deep in the big muddy like Vietnam, just in the muddy that forced everybody to walk 6 miles, the poor liberals. Am I right about this, Tim? Is that what you got?
You're very close. I'm still here at Burning Man, stuck in it.
There you go. It is Burning Man. Yeah, I knew you were partial to that. Your thoughts on the experience? You're our correspondent who was actually at Burning Man.
I think it's wonderful. They learn how a cashless, machineless society actually works.
I just read, like, I didn't even know what it was, because I mean, is it like Lollapalooza for the liberal limousine set? Is Tom
what Burning Man is?
Yeah, it's kind of, I know it's getting back to nature and all that, but it's what liberals do, right?
It's yeah, I guess so. I had a buddy that used to go to Burning Man year after year, and he had this huge punk rock roller coaster built that he would ship out there from Detroit and build up and put it up at Burning Man. It had torches and go-go dancers, and they'd blast punk rock music. And they were told that they weren't welcome at Burning Man.
Yeah, well, I would say
a little too dark
and a little too high tech. I mean, isn't this like a back to nature thing?
No, there's these huge art installations all over the place.
Okay, so
it's kind of a hippie art show, I guess, is the best way to describe it. No music. There's no music.
Oh God.
Well, there's no scheduled bands, but I'm sure there's music being played. And like I said, it's not the music that my buddy was playing for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because, music is the driving force behind liberalism. Somebody once pointed out, liberal radio never took off. Al Franken notwithstanding. Well, Al Franken is the perfect illustration. But conservative radio did, because liberals like their music, like WXRT, and they get their vibe through the music. So not being bereft of the music is tough for the liberals. But I just
if you got plenty of drugs, you don't need the music, right?
I guess not.
You just hear the music. Hear the music anyway.
Yeah. But I just think I like the idea of a bunch of rich liberals sinking in their own quagmire, giggity. Pardon my Family Guyism.
Having to have some capitalists with mechanical knowledge pull them out.
Right. It's always
that's the funny part.
It's always the Americans who have to come to the rescue. So it was Labor Day weekend. I confess, there's just too much time to do things, and I got so bored at one point. So yeah, I was so bored over the Labor Day weekend that at one point, I think it was like about 9:40 on one of the nights, I just at that moment I was figuring out how much time was left, like 2 hours and 18 minutes until the next Wordle came out. And I mean, that's kind of, that's
you can buy a Wordle app, so you don't have to wait for the New York Times Wordle. It just
I kind of, our society now is so bad. It used to be you had to wait for your favorite song to come on the radio. Now it's instant gratification. I mean, do I have to go to Burning Man to rough it? Where Wordle isn't even, they probably don't even, I can't even probably get the app, if I'm at Burning Man. Anyway, speaking of indulging in the basics. So I guess it was the city of Highland Park wanted to have this immersive poverty experience. They were going to have it, of course, at all places at the Highland Park Country Club. I mean, the Tom Wolfe books write themselves now. Okay. So they were going to have this, how does it feel to go through poverty and not have resources available? And it was going to be at the Highland Park Country Club on this Saturday, and the thing got canceled. Apparently, I'm not sure why.
Canceled for lack of poverty.
Well, I was thinking it might have been in conflict with New Trier's annual Unconscious Bias Day, because 7 years ago and my former partner Dan Propp mentioned this, but I didn't see him mention it too. It's just all great minds run on the same track. But 7 years ago they had this thing where they put their hair shirts on for 5 minutes at New Trier, and but then the Reverend Meeks, bless him, wanted to send a busload of students from the South Side to, attend New Trier High School. And whoa, wait a second here. I don't know how, that's when NIMBY kicks in. But they were going to have this immersive experience in Highland Park, and then they canceled it. And I don't know what really happened. Theoretically, I could see, okay, let's see how, the other half or 9% live. That's fine, as opposed to New Trier, where it was just nothing but a guilt trip. Although I've got a feeling that in the execution of this Highland Park thing, had it come off, there would have been plenty of guilt regarding that too. So yeah,
if you want immersive poverty, heck, all you have to do is walk about 10 minutes past the T-shirt shops next time you're on a cruise.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it doesn't take very long. But well, anyway, I just you see those kinds of things, and it's like, oh, please. And of course, Highland Park, I mean, I think you should only have one cause celeb per town, and Highland Park, unfortunately, has the gun control issue. Spread it out. Have Winnetka or some other place handle the poverty situation. There's a story about these cities of the future. They're going to be called 15-minute cities, I guess. It's going to be like a regulation that you can't travel outside 15 miles outside of or 15 minutes outside of your city more than like 100 times a year. Otherwise, you get taxed for this.
In most of Chicago, you can't get outside the city in 15 minutes for most.
Especially on a Friday afternoon during rush hour. And now with the Kennedy and all that. But Professor Norman Fenton, wasn't he on Three's Company? I think on the tyrannical nature of 15-minute cities. Nobody ever voted for this. People are not allowed to use their cars outside of their 15-minute zone more than 100 times a year. The idea is essentially to stop you traveling wherever you want. I mean, does this exist? It usually helps if I read a story as opposed to just a tweet. Is this some kind of? Is this like Red China? Is it what's happening? Or
no, it's been my. Let me. I don't have my tin foil here, but sure. It's been my speculation. That's why they want to go to electric cars. Because they can then regulate exactly how much you drive. Nobody's going to stand for gas rationing, but when the electric company says no, you've already charged your car too much this week. I mean, that's a reality.
They will do it by making it prohibitively expensive to travel.
The smart grid's actually the smart grid technology. What it does is there has to be a microchip in every electrical appliance.
Right.
So that this isn't conspiracy. This is for real. They want a microchip in every appliance so that the electric company can turn off certain appliances to conserve power.
No, right. It's going to be rationing.
So if it's dark and there's no wind, and yet, you won't be able to vacuum.
And yet that Snowball and the other pigs in Animal Farm will still be flying their Gulfstreams down to Key West every year. I missed that note, Chris, that you want to put that up again. I mean, something about Oak Park, the People's Republic of Oak Park, or you could just say it if you want. I don't want to miss this. Oak Park, the Evanston of the West, of course, has now outlawed gas heat stoves in all new construction. You know what I also like what they outlawed Oak Park? Outlaw people coming in from the west side of Chicago. Don't they have these cul-de-sacs there? Because they're so close. They're so close to where I was born.
Speaking of Oak Park,
Yeah.
when I toured a Frank Lloyd Wright home, Lloyd Wright home, and they actually had his light fixtures. He thought it was really nice to have. They were combination gas and electric, so they were a gas light on the top with electric bulb underneath. As he liked the mix of the colors from the light that you'd get from that.
Oh no, he was avant-garde. Ernest Hemingway, was great. Oak Park, is where it's at if you want to guilt trip everybody. Okay, I get it. So how was your Labor Day weekend? I talked about how boring mine was. But,
it wasn't that boring. I got loads of projects around the house, and I forego them and grilled ribs. So
there you go. There you go. Yeah, that's the way to do it. I'm excited about you know what? I actually look at it as a burden to have to watch the NFL because it's starting again. And I'm in
this is the week.
I'm in a fantasy league as well. And I feel an obligation to watch the Bears on Sunday. And it's like, enough already. There's got to be something else. But I will. I'll watch. I'm still addicted to you. You're not, are you?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
It's I grew up in Detroit. I lived in Chicago. I spent a lot of time in Minnesota and work in Wisconsin. So
well, you got the whole Central Division.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
North Division.
Exactly.
Right.
So I can't really pick a team.
No, I understand.
I guess I could pick a division, right?
Well, anyway, I think the Bears will win because I think Justin Fields is a better runner than Jordan Love. And you can book that one. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
There's just no evidence that masks, make any difference, he told the journalist Mayan Damasi, full stop. But wait, hold on. What about the N95 masks as opposed to the lower quality surgical or cloth masks? Makes no difference. None of it, he said. Well, what about the studies that initially persuaded policymakers to impose mask mandates? They were convinced by non-randomized studies, flawed observational studies. How do we get beyond that finding of that particular review?
Yeah, but there are other studies, Michael, that show at an individual level for individual. When you're talking about the effect on the epidemic or the pandemic as a whole, the data are less strong. But when you talk about as an individual basis of someone protecting themselves or protecting themselves from spreading it to others, there's no doubt that there are many studies that show that there is an advantage.
Bruce Will, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. And Dr. Fauci, he has no credibility whatsoever. There's
I figure he must have a lot of stock invested in 3M or a lot of money invested in 3M stock.
Nobody's buying what he has to say, are they? It's just
I think some people are. I think some people
the
are.
liberals are.
I know some people they're still masking in the car alone.
No, and that to me is the one thing. If we're looking at the polls right now, and Trump amazingly, despite the indictments, it may even be leading Biden. George Stephanopoulos was aghast at this poll, the most recent polls. But a guy like Noah Rothman, a National Review says, well, okay, but that's right now. It's 2023 and November 24, things will be different. Well, actually, it could be worse for Biden. If we're in some kind of mask regime from the central government and nobody's buying it, that alone could put Trump over the top. And yes, I know that Trump, because the MAGA types don't want to hear it. Trump was in favor of COVID restrictions a lot more than Ron DeSantis was, but nobody wants to think about that. They don't want to hear about that. Okay, fine. He wasn't, he wasn't responsible, but that is the one thing that would put anybody over Biden.
Well, we were all kind of in favor of COVID restrictions for a couple of weeks, weren't we?
That was it. And then that was it. It was done. Yes. Everybody in Florida who was sunbathing was going to die, but for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But even at the very beginning of it, it was hysterical. If you remember, St. Patrick's Day, is a big day in Chicago with the bars. And as I recall, I hope I got my chronology right here. The restrictions weren't put in until after that Sunday was over, so that they could have this. Oh no, it's not that bad. Until the next day.
I remember that it cracked me up because all the colleges had closed, and the bars had not. So it was probably a record. If I remember right, it was a record St. Patrick's Day. People were lining up on Rush Street trying to get it on St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
It's there's these kids. What are these kids doing in this bar? It's like, well, you closed college, you shut down their jobs. What do you think they're gonna? Gave them $600. What do you think they're gonna do?
But then they didn't shut it down. They didn't shut it down. They waited. I think at that point, like Lori Lightfoot wasn't really on the same page as Pritzker, but then they got their conspiratorial act together. So Jim Garrity in National Review asked this question. Did you see the ceremony where Biden, was masked and unmasked? He was standing next to an 81-year-old retired Army captain, Larry Taylor. Did you see this at all?
Oh, I did.
Okay, so Biden didn't put his mask back on before walking down an aisle through the assembled audience. And supposedly this was done purposefully by him. And Garrity says Biden seems to believe he's not at risk of spreading COVID standing next to another senior citizen or walking by lots of people, but that he is at risk by standing around during the benediction. And as Garrity says, if they had just said, hey, the president has to go to the bathroom now, but they couldn't. They had to go through this, through this.
Well, I don't think
theater.
I don't know if that's what it was. I mean, if you look at it, the people he put the medal on the guy. Yeah. They started applauding, and he said, "Oh, that they want me. That's my cue to leave." And because he's running down the aisle waving to everybody as he goes down, thinking they're applauding for him. It's the funniest thing. The guy's definitely confused, definitely, and then of course the Medal of Honor recipient sitting on stage going, "Oh."
Yeah, but what about the mask, Mr. President? I mean,
that as well. Yeah. Look at that face there. That he's confused.
Oh yeah, he looks a little.
They're all applauding, and they're going, "Oh, that means it's time for me to leave."
No, right. Well, look. What's the latest poll? Like 61% of the public, including a lot of Democrats, think that he is infirm, and then of course, and shouldn't be the president. And then, of course, the thing that should really bury him, it was the soft shoe they're doing over the Hunter indictment. This little fungible turkey, who's the U.S. attorney, David Weiss, saying, "Yeah, I think I'm going to indict him at the end of the month." But as Andy McCarthy says, why not now? It's easy. Anybody could do it now. Indict him right now.
Well, actually,
for a gun charge.
Yeah, that's what it is. They dropped the tax charges. Yep. That's one thing they did. They dropped the tax charges. So basically, the indictment's like, see, no, we're not. It's not special treatment. It's we're not covering up for Joe Biden's.
None of this is gonna. It's not gonna work because even if he's not indicted, it's just going to draw more attention to the fact that the fix is in. Congress is still going to go after this, and right now people believe it. It's really the burden is almost on Biden to prove his innocence. Everybody thinks he was involved in this. What was the latest thing that he was approving talking points for a memo regarding Burisma? It's not working. They think he's old. They think he's demented. They think he's corrupt. And you know what? The economy isn't all that great either. So,
Yeah, I wonder whose idea it was to actually say that he should be campaigning on Bidenomics.
well, that's a funny thing. So I mean, every morning for some reason I still get like this morning alert from the New York Times, and a couple of days ago it was they were going to explain Bidenomics, and I'm not going to read it. I mean, you talk about voodoo economics. The basis of Biden economics is, look how many jobs we created. Yeah, we lost all. That's because you want to go from all the jobs that we lost as a result of COVID. I mean, nobody believes this stuff. Now, it is true that the rate of inflation has gone down from last year, but it's still inflation, and it's still bad. And again, people aren't really buying that. So
I hope.
Yeah. All right. Just a little comic turn right now. So I was reading this article in National Review by Jack Butler, young writer there. He reviewed the book Modern Times by Paul Johnson. Have you ever read that? It's a history of like the 1920s through 1980s. Paul Johnson considered really a great historian. And, me, I'd rather read an article about the book than read the book itself. So, but, a lot of interesting things, like, for example, colonialism wasn't really all that bad. It certainly wasn't a concerted effort to enslave peoples. It was very haphazard, and a lot of societies benefited from it too. You don't want to hear that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
Colonialism gets the bad rap, but he does, say that how Stalin and Hitler and communism and Nazism are two sides of the same coin, but that how individuals affected history so greatly during that time when we had the machinery that somebody could take control of the apparatus like that. So that's why I feel like I don't mind having bumbling, senile, dissembling men as the president of the United States, because I don't like one big charismatic, powerful figure in there who can take control of the machinery. So I don't want Biden in there, but I could.
So you'd rather have a Politburo?
I could live with Trump,
an unelected Politburo.
But one of the funny things that this guy mentions was that if Jack Butler does about the details in the book, we all know about Gandhi's preoccupation with bodily functions. Of course, you knew about that. Right.
Sure.
I mean, he was like recording his bowel movements and things like that. I mean, it was.
You know what else he would do? He would sleep with naked underage girls to test whether or not he was virtuous.
Did he succeed? I can't remember.
No, he'd wake up every morning going, "Oh, darn, I did it again." Because I will try tonight again.
Yeah, right. Try again. Don't we all? I mean, who can't relate to Gandhi? So, as a matter of fact, I remember when Tiger Woods' father was saying he was going to be the next Gandhi. Little did we know that he was the next Gandhi with his profligacy. Now, there was one other thing that apparently Mao, and I laughed out loud at this, Mao had a preoccupation with farts. I mean,
what?
Yeah, I mean, do I look flatulent in this Mao jacket? I mean, he did. Who knew?
You want to talk about a cultural purge?
Oh man. So hey, I thought that the WLS radio job in the afternoon was open because John Howell got axed after 9 years. John Howell's the guy who replaced me at WLS, but he lasted almost 9 years. Apparently, I have a feeling it's, they don't want to pay anything there, but also he, waffled. I mean, actually was anti-Trump, and now they're going to have Mark Levin supposedly live on at that time. But I would have taken the job.
I wondered what happened to him. I noticed he was gone. I didn't.
John Howell?
Oh yeah, no, I noticed he was gone. I didn't know why. It's because he would take time off all the time. He had health issues.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I like John, but I don't like that he, got my job and he's not as talented as I am. But so he loses the gig. I wanted to do the gig. I offered it the WLS. I said, look, I just want to be able to do it from my house. If I get a big call from the law firm, I'll have to toss to a MyPillow commercial. But there's so many of them. It would be seamless. And, I'm not a Trumpian, but as Rich Lowry said, Trump was the only middle finger available. And I've used that middle finger twice, and I'm prepared to do it a third time. So, but they're going with Mark Levin. So there you go. There was a shot for us, Tim. I thought we could be doing afternoons, and you could do it.
I didn't even know we were in the running.
Oh, we weren't. We were never in it. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
Good morning. That complaint was filed yesterday in the Circuit Court of Cook County, and it claims that both Kia and Hyundai failed to properly equip their vehicles with anti-theft technology, something that most other car companies have done as a standard feature for over a decade. Now, more specifically, the city has focused on Kias and Hyundai sold in the U.S. between 2011 and 2022. They claim both companies deceptively assured consumers that these vehicles possessed advanced safety features despite knowing about the defect and its consequences.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. And yeah, I'm in favor of Kia and Hyundai making these cars so that they are easier to steal. I look at it as like a de facto reparations program for the young and destitute. I mean, if they were, it was impossible to, what do they do? Steal the catalytic converters or steal the cars or both? What are these kids going to do and so this is,
there's no more midnight basketball, right?
Right. It's a form of reparations. Here's the problem. The underclass doing this is stealing from not very well-to-do people who buy Kias and Hyundais, I guess. But since when do we allow the not very well-to-do escape the worst of the worst? I mean, if we allowed that, we'd be in favor of school choice, right? And speaking of school choice, when I segue here, best segue of the day so far, but the day is still young. The Chicago Teachers Union president, not Henry Louis Davis Gates or whatever her name is, she has admitted after it was reported on some site that she's sending one of her kids to a Catholic private high school. The Chicago Teachers Union president. Now,
who would know better than her?
Well, right. I mean, this is already a dog bites man story. I mean, it's right. We know that this happens. Now,
of course you did.
Somebody was quoting her that what she said on March the 6th, 2022. My children go to Chicago public schools. These are the things that legitimize my space within the coalition. Roll over La Rochefoucauld is all I could say. La Rochefoucauld, of course, who said hypocrisy the tribute that vice pays to virtue. But she was interviewed about this, and here's her justification. She says, well, there's so much disinvestment right now, and there's no extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, she called some of them, and there's, they don't have the resources that you can't really get the best education in the Chicago public schools. Well, duh, that's why people want to go, want to have school choice. Her argument against that, and because, always got to look at the evidence in a light most favorable to your opponent. She says, well, no, we can't take the money that should be going into our public schools and channel it into, these quasi private efforts like school choice. We already have a hard enough time. I'm thinking, could we do this at least? Could we fire like one Chicago public school teacher? I mean, one. I mean, the number of teachers that have been fired because this union has such a grip on the city of Chicago and owns the mayor's office. Okay, I mean, he's a pigeon put in there by the Chicago public schools. It's so minuscule, the number of teachers who get fired. I just tweeted during our break here, talked to Dan Proft, my former partner. I wanted to know what the amount was per pupil in the Chicago public schools. He said $30,000 a year. Now
sure,
5,000 here, 5,000 there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. 30,000 a year, and somehow we can't provide basic services for the students who are in the public schools. Hey, get rid of I'm sure they're top heavy with administrators. Get rid of them. Get rid of bad teachers. Pay good teachers more money. But of course, they don't want that. This is where she's disingenuous. They just want the control. They just want to keep the union in power, and they don't really have the interest of the students at heart. It reminds me of what I think Albert Shanker, the New York Teachers Union president, I forgot the exact statement he was, but it was basically along the lines of screw the kids, we're the ones who are important. And
kids. There's kids in the school.
when you're when you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks drop, the adults got to suck the oxygen first and then give it to the kid. But you don't have to suck all the oxygen out of the room, out of the cabin. And I mean,
here's my question: the school she's sending her kids, her kids, are the teachers there unionized?
Oh, I doubt it. So two things. I remember when I was back doing the WLS morning show, we had Karen Lewis on. Oh, was that a mistake on her part to be on with us? Well, the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, Rita, nice Jewish girl, black woman, Jewish girl, nice Jewish girl, real smart. It was like a chemistry teacher. Unfortunately, died of cancer a couple of years ago. She, I said, here's how we remedy the problem in the Chicago public schools. First, we import a bunch of Asian students. Okay, that immediately lifts all the scores. And the second thing, I forgot what the second thing was because I think it was done with the first. But she, it's an intractable problem. I mean, you can't. We tried to go the constitutional route, but you can't diminish the value of their contracts. The Illinois Supreme Court said you'd have to amend the Constitution. So, I mean, we're stuck with this pension. We stuck with this pension crisis, and yes, kids aren't getting the resources, but it's just disingenuous because it's the teachers come first, second, last and foremost, and the heck with with a lot of the students, and so, but yeah, she got caught doing that, and
someone pointed out to me that in the private schools there's ample supplies. There's pencils and paper and everything that the kids need to go to school is there at the school, but the teachers are paid less.
Right. Well, here was my second point. My second point that I made with Karen Lewis was, why don't we just fire all the Chicago public school teachers and hire from the list that the waiting list for the Chicago Archdiocese? Just hire the Catholic school teachers, because you wind up paying them 80% or 70% of what the Chicago public school teachers make, and you've solved your crisis right there, right? And you'll have supplies, and you won't have to complain about having to buy supplies for your students out of your own pocket, right? Which is a common complaint. Yeah. But this for me is just a prime example of why Marxism never worked, because you never achieve a classless society. You always end up with a two-tier society where you have the everybody and then the ruling elite who actually have the things that everybody else cannot have, which is like John Kerry's private jet or good Catholic schools. Right, exactly. So, okay, cleansing breath from that. So there's this 109-year-old woman gave her secret to longevity, and it basically boils down to stay away from people. And as a matter of fact, she looks a little like Jean-Paul Sartre probably would right now. Hell is other people. I saw that, as well as another tweet from a guy who I think was 113, and he was saying the secret to his life longevity was not getting married, which dovetails nicely with her secret. Stay away from people. Buy cats. Right. If you don't get married, of course, I think you're playing from the ladies' tees. But I'm beginning to think, that is the key to longevity. I'm beginning to think that masking and social distancing are the way to go. We'll stay away from people forever. I mean, that's not a bad idea for longevity's sake. But then I'm also wondering what are we know some of the deleterious consequences of masking and distancing. Well, specifically, school kids got the shaft. Chicago public school students, especially. But is that going
That's kind of interesting. That's kind of interesting that on one hand, was she the teachers union president during the pandemic? So, I mean, was she at one point having her kids in school and saying that I'm not going to open the schools at the same time?
I don't know that she was the president at that point. I don't
that
follow
would be interesting.
that closely, but I'm
call
sure
call Dan again, ask him.
Yeah, right. I will do that. But I'm just wondering if social distancing and masking and people living in their silos will increase the obesity epidemic that we have in this country. And apparently something like 50% of the population is going to be morbidly obese by 2030, which is only 7 years from now. Right. And
it's something to look forward. Something to look forward to. I'll be normal then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll be fit in 7 years.
but start eating quickly. Those of you who have under 25% body mass, it's or 25 rating. But yeah, I'm just wondering about that. In 2030, we're going to be a lot of problem. The good news, however,
we're going to be walking. We're going to be walking more though, because aren't we going to be all electric by 2030? All the cars are going to be electric by 2030 too.
Yeah, that's going to happen. The good news is that Medicare apparently isn't going up as much as it had been. So that was a recent story. The bad news, of course, is that we now have 55 million people on Medicare. We're going to have 80 million in 7 years. So so we're going to be bankrupt. We're going to be obese. You might want to think if you want to be around 7 years from now, Tim. But we will be around for the next segment. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
Things that have never been done, and that makes people uncomfortable. When you see a confident black man sitting up there talking his talk, walking his walk, coaching 75% African Americans in the locker room, that's kind of threatening.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. Now, Tim, I know you're not a big football fan, but there was a kind of a sociological impact of the Colorado football team's victory last week over the TCU Horned Frogs. Deon Sanders is the coach of the Colorado team. And you familiar with Neon Deon, of course?
I'm familiar with him when he was with the NFL. What is this? What is this other thing you're talking about?
So now he's
I never heard of these. I never heard of these teams.
He's been a football coach for a while. He even took his son from one school and went over to Colorado, and they had a big upset victory over TCU over the Labor Day weekend. And I mean, and there's been video of Deon inspiring the team with his locker room talk, and it is very inspiring. I mean, I think he wake Gipper from the dead and get him to play for Notre Dame. But he talks about commitment, and I keep thinking, well, those college boys aren't going to have much time to study the great books of the Western world with all the commitment they're given to football. But be that as it may, they did win the game. However, then got to play the race card. I mean, it's almost axiomatic. Mayor Johnson says that the criticism that he's gotten for his first 100 days bases it in part on racism. He says Deon says we're doing things that have never been done and that makes people uncomfortable. When you see a confident black man talking his talk and walking his walk, coaching 75% African Americans in the locker room, that's kind of threatening. Oh, they don't like that. Oh, we like it, Neon. We love you. Nobody's against this. Sometimes you have to shut Deon up. There was one great thing about Twitter, or X as it's now called. There was a video. Deon is tagging up from third base. I think he was on the Reds at the time. I can't remember. Ozzie Guillen is a shortstop in short left field. He catches a fly ball, and you see him daring Deon to tag up and try to score because, he was the fastest guy around. And Deon takes the bait, and Ozzie throws him out at the plate. And that's the kind of thing that needs to be done. Also, there was a famous moment. Carlton Fisk, years ago, gosh, when was this? Like early 90s, late 80s. Deon didn't run out a ground ball, and Fisk was the catcher for the White Sox, and he lectured him in front of everybody. So you're supposed to run out those plays. Okay, I love Pudge. Love what he has to say. By the way, I'm off on the time. I didn't clock this. Are we like 3 minutes into it right now? Something like that.
I got 2:55.
Okay. So anyway, speaking of baseball, and I know you won't care about this, but I'll throw it in. This week, there was the 30th anniversary of Jim Abbott throwing a no-hitter for the New York Yankees. And of course, what was interesting about that was Jim Abbott had only one arm. He was a one-armed pitcher. And here, you're going to love this, Tim. The year that he did it, 30 years ago, 1993, also the same year that The Fugitive came out. Yeah, think about it. Think about it. Yeah, think where I'm going with this one.
Okay, I think we found him, huh?
I think you found it. Speaking of coinky dinkies, while I got you here and you got no place else to go, you can't hide. I was talking to you about how boring my Labor Day weekend was. Here's how boring it really got. Oh, by the way, Chris says he had an arm, he didn't have a hand. Okay, all right. Thank you. You're right about that. Let's be perfectly accurate. But during Labor Day weekend, I'm picking up food for my wife, and as is my wont, I've got the radio on, and I'm flipping around the radio stations. I'll change, even if my favorite song is on, I'll switch to see if there's something better. I'm a Liberty Gibbet that way. I put on WXRT for a second, and they're playing this song that I don't recognize, and then I flip over to WLS-FM. They're playing the exact same song that I don't recognize. And now, I don't even, they have totally different formats, supposedly. I know this is fascinating you, but it's fascinating me even more. It turned out they were both playing Orchestral Maneuver in the Darks, If You Leave. Are you familiar with that song?
Yeah.
I didn't even know it.
Really?
No.
Oh my gosh. Where were you? Where'd you spend your 80s?
Married.
It was
not from the ladies' tees.
It was in a John Hughes film, I believe.
Oh, okay.
It's 16 Candles, I think.
They're both playing it at the same time, and I'm thinking to myself, how often does that happen? Like once in a blue moon, and then I remember we had a blue moon, didn't we? I mean, it's just too much for me, man. Oh
yeah,
man.
that's a crossover song though. That song was both on the alternative and the pop charts. Right. There were a few songs like that in that era. And so XRT, which plays, kind of quasi alternative, and WLS-FM, which plays oldies.
Right.
It would be, of course, it would be on both their.
There's your Venn diagram.
Yeah, that's a crossover right there.
WXRT and WLS-FM.
Psychedelic Furs probably too. Any songs that were used in a John Hughes film, I think, are gonna be that hit that crossover.
Yeah. Oh, this is so cool. This talk. I think I need to.
You're as interested in music as I am in sports. I could tell.
I think maybe it'd be more interesting if I had a 3 or 4 blue moons to drink, which is about the only beer that I can handle. Okay, so let's go to even something more mundane and ridiculous.
With orange slice or no orange slice?
Either way. I like it either way. How about you?
I don't like Blue Moon.
Yeah, I figured. It's not a man's drink.
It's too orangey.
Yeah. May as well be drinking knee high, right? Okay, so Rich Roper tweets out a little trivia thing. He shows a picture of this big building in Chicago. It's currently a restaurant, and I forgot which restaurant it is, but he says, which famous person in Chicago used to own this restaurant, and he says there longtime Chicagoans will tell you this building once housed a restaurant bearing the name of a certain someone who was quite good at their primary job. So what bugged me about this was not the question, but that Rich Roper used their when he should have just used his. So that's what bugged me about it. But because I haven't bought into the modern pronoun thing. I'm really old school, but old school enough to know the answer to that trivia question. You know that who had that restaurant right there?
I did not.
Well, that was Michael Jordan's.
Oh,
Michael Jordan's restaurant.
Has Michael Jordan ever claimed his pronouns? Their pronouns?
He had never claimed his pronouns. I was there for the opening of Michael Jordan's restaurant. He gave everybody in the media like a 1-minute interview. You got to sit down with him. So mine was when he sat at the table with me. I I held a tray up and I said, do you hold the tray up with your fingertips or with your palm? It's like a basketball. And now I forget what the answer is, but he appreciated that question. Good old number 23. What else we got here? Oh, hey, Jimmy Fallon is the bad guy. I understand.
I saw that article in the Rolling Stone. Is that apparently he's not he's heck to work with.
Yeah, and the thing is he appears like such a hail fellow well met on TV. He's like the guy, like the antidote to Colbert and Kimmel, because he'll like talk to Trump, and he tries not to be as political as everybody else. He seems like
he got a lot of grief for that. Remember when he tousled his hair? And they said, what are you doing? What are you doing playing with that monster like that?
No, I get that. And so it seems like he's a nice guy, but what he is probably, as Iowa Hawk probably says, intimates, he's brown nosers usually want to be brown nosed as well. Have you noticed that? And that's why he treats his staff horribly.
A friend of mine and friend of the show, Dobie Maxwell, used to be in pro wrestling, and he said that when you meet the pro wrestlers, he said the heels were always the nicest guys,
right?
That the stars were always the jerks, and he said there's something he says he saw that in comedy too, is that the real nice comedians, Bill Cosby, are animals backstage, off stage, and it's I guess it's something when you're a nasty, and then you get like your Lewis Black, who's just a great guy. It just he's not Sam Kinison was a great guy. I see the same thing in comedy. So.
I always wondered I always thought like Tom Dreesen. Do you know Tom?
I know Tom.
Okay, yeah, but he never was like. He was like Sinatra's guy and everything, but he was never like, like Sam Kinison or one of the, the big headliners, right? Am I right about that?
He was from a different generation. When like Sam Kinison and Lewis Black came up, he was still with the Frank Sinatra generation.
I just thought he was too nice to be funny. That's what that was the problem. Have we run out of time here on this show? I think we have, haven't we?
I don't know. We still got about a minute left.
We got 1 minute to play in the period. Okay. One final thing I wanted to mention is that why do people have mirrors in their home bathrooms that can show you full length mirrors that can reflect the toilet? You got to be really a narcissist to want to see that going on. But people have that. Who designed? Frank Lloyd Wright didn't put that in his house in Oak Park, did he? Oh my goodness!
I've seen it on shower doors, and so that you can actually, so you have the option, you can slide the shower door open if you don't want to look at that.
Oh my goodness! Well, that's a great way to end the show. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
And that's the Weekly Wrap on radio and television. Follow Bruce at Bruce Wolf Shy on Twitter and Tim at timslagle.com. The Weekly Wrap with Bruce Wolf, a CP Pods production.